Ever felt that moment where you know something needs doing, but the right path just isn't clear? We're taking a deep dive today into, well, an ancient concept that feels surprisingly urgent for modern challenges, especially when we talk about professional ethics.
Absolutely. It's something that pops up again and again in different fields.
So our mission is to unpack Aristotle's idea of phronesis, often translated as practical wisdom. We'll explore how it's being seen as this crucial, maybe missing piece for ethical decision-making in professions. We're taking a special look at teaching.
And we've got some really interesting sources for this empirical research from the Jubilee Center for Character and Virtues, alongside, of course, those timeless philosophical texts. You give it a great blend of theory and, well, real-world data.
Exactly. Think of this deep dive as maybe a shortcut to gaining a kind of ethical superpower, one that helps you navigate those nuanced, uncodifiable dilemmas that rules and codes just can't quite capture. We'll explore what phronesis truly is, why it seems to be in short supply, how we might actually cultivate it, and yeah, some of the surprising challenges that come with that.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, so let's set the scene. You hear about ethical scandals far too often these days, don't you? From, say, the fallout of the 2008 financial crisis to troubling revelations in public service. It feels like public trust has really taken a hit.
It really has.
But how did we get here? What was the traditional approach to professional ethics that maybe led us down this path?
Well, historically, the dominant moral frameworks for professions were, broadly speaking, utilitarianism, aiming for the greatest good in deontology, which really emphasizes duty and sticking to the rules.
Right, the rule book approach.
Exactly. The idea was to create these detailed ethical codes, prescribing correct behavior, procedures, even sanctions. The belief was basically that these clear rules would keep professionals on the straight and narrow, and crucially, maintain their public reputation.
Okay, that sounds logical on the surface. Keep things clear.
It does. But this rule-based approach has, kind of paradoxically, led to real concerns among professionals themselves. There's this growing sense that ideal expertise is being replaced by what some call managerialist orthodoxies.
Managerialist orthodoxies, what does that mean in practice?
It means a heavy focus on formal compliance, ticking boxes, formalistic accountability. It's often seen as de-skilling professionals, eroding their personal responsibility and their ability to make nuanced judgments based on the specific context.
Ah, I see. So it takes away the judgment call element.
Precisely. It supplants that personal responsibility and contextual discernment. People feel like they're just following procedures, not exercising professional wisdom.
So if I'm hearing this right, we've sort of shifted from an ideal of professional expertise guided by an internal compass to a system that's mainly about compliance. And that feels, well, inherently anti-professional in a way.
That's a very good way to put it. It feels like a problem that needs a fundamentally different kind of solution than just more rules.
Exactly. And that's where Aristotle's concept of phronesis comes in, isn't it? It's being looked at now as a way to maybe rescue professional ethics from this kind of stale, rule-bound formalism. But what is practical wisdom, really?
Right. Phronesis, in the Aristotelian sense, is really nothing less than the key concept holding together a whole virtue-based approach to professional ethics. Generally speaking, it's the intellectual meta-virtue.
Meta-virtue.
Yeah, think of it as the one that helps a moral agent integrate and adjudicate upon the sometimes conflicting messages coming from different virtues. In a sense, phronesis is the conductor of the whole virtue orchestra.
I like that analogy, the conductor.
It helps pull everything together. So re-equipping professionals with phronesis means giving them the capacities to make excellent ethical decisions themselves, building on their own moral and civic virtues, and importantly, their insights into situational complexities. And these are insights, I really want to emphasize this, that can never be fully replaced with codified formulas or checklists.
Okay, that makes sense. It's about internal capacity, not just external rules. So here's where it gets really interesting for me. How does this conductor actually operate in a person? What are its functions? How does it work?
Well, neo-Aristotelian analyses, people looking back at Aristotle with fresh eyes, they identify 4 key functions of phronesis that really help us understand it.
Okay, let's break those down.
First, there's the constitutive function. This is basically the cognitive ability to perceive the ethically salient, the important aspects of a situation, and to appreciate them as calling for specific responses.
So it's about seeing clearly what matters ethically.
Exactly. For a teacher, it's that capacity to read a classroom situation, to sense the underlying dynamics, the ethical nuances.
Got it. Like an ethical radar. What's next?
Then there's the blueprint function. This integrates that perception with the professional's overall understanding of what matters, their ethical identity, their aims, their aspirations. It sort of shapes their professional flourishing, connecting the immediate situation to their bigger picture.
Okay, so seeing the situation and then connecting it to your own values and goals makes sense.
Third is the emotional regulative function. This is crucial. It's about bringing your emotional responses into line with your ethical understanding and judgment.
Ah, managing the feelings that come up.
Right. Like adjusting an inappropriate emotional response. Maybe you feel unjustly angry with a kind of inner talking to, bringing your feelings back into alignment with a reasoned ethical view.
Okay, and the last one?
The fourth is the integrative adjudicative function. This is the really tricky part sometimes. It's the ability to integrate different components of a good life, especially when virtues or values seem to conflict.
Like when honesty might clash with compassion.
Precisely. This function allows for those blended responses like being compassionately honest, finding the right way to deliver difficult news, or it might involve deciding to consciously put a virtue on hold in a specific situation because another one takes precedence right then.
Wow. Okay, so it's much more than just knowing rules. It's about perception, identity, emotional control, and navigating those really tough ethical conflicts. It sounds less like a checklist and more like a holistic, dynamic way of being.
That's a great way to describe it.
So this raises a really important question. If it's so crucial, what does the research actually tell us about its presence, especially in a demanding profession like teaching? Is it there? Is it missing?
Well, that Jubilee Center research you mentioned earlier provides some fascinating insights here. They surveyed over 4,000 professionals in the UK, including a significant number of teachers.
And what did they find? What was the experience on the ground?
A really significant finding, quite consistently, was that both teacher trainees and experienced teachers complained that the moral middle of the profession gets squeezed out of their training.
The moral middle. What's that exactly?
It means that while they learn about very general principles, big ideas like inclusion or very specific rules, like, say, dress codes or reporting procedures.
Right, the big picture and the tiny details.
Exactly. But there's often no time, or maybe no space, dedicated to discussing actual classroom quandaries, those messy everyday ethical dilemmas, and how you actually deal with them.
So the practical application in tricky situations gets missed.
Largely, yes. And this leaves them feeling, well, torn and pressured. Many reported feeling unable to act out their real character because the training hadn't equipped them for these gray areas.
That sounds incredibly frustrating for them. What else came out of the data?
We also saw a significant mismatch between the character strengths the professionals ascribed to themselves and those they attributed to the ideal professional in their field.
Oh, interesting. A gap between who I am and who I think I should be?
Precisely. And notably, 3 virtues often considered key ingredients of phronesis, judgment, prudence, and perspective were among the top 10 virtues showing the greatest mismatch.
Wow. So the very skills needed for practical wisdom are the ones people feel are lacking in the ideal professional, or maybe in themselves compared to that ideal.
It strongly indicates a perceived lack of training or perhaps opportunity in that kind of nuanced, uncodifiable decision-making. People feel unprepared for the gray areas.
Okay, so they feel unprepared. But when they do face these tough calls, did the research show whether teachers tend to rely more on the rules or on their own character, their own judgment?
Interestingly, teachers were actually found to be the least reliant on just formal duties, what we'd call deontological reasoning, following the rules when making difficult decisions, especially when you compare them to other UK professions studied.
Really? So they naturally lean more towards a virtue-based approach.
It suggests a kind of natural inclination that way, yes.
Yeah.
However, there's a fascinating dip. Confidence in one's own compass, their internal judgment, typically dips from the first year of undergraduate study to the final year.
It goes down during training. Why would that be?
Well, one hypothesis is that the strong focus on formal codes and regulations in many ethics classes might inadvertently undermine that initial confidence in personal judgment before it tends to pick up again after they've spent some time actually practicing in the field.
Huh. So experience rebuilds that confidence. Despite these challenges, though, you mentioned teachers scored quite highly on professional purpose, that sense of doing good.
They did, comparatively high.
Yeah.
A strong sense of contributing to the greater good.
So what threatened that? If they have this strong sense of purpose, what gets in the way?
The interviews revealed several undermining factors. Things like perceived failures to act out their own personal moral character, feeling like their professional context wasn't conducive to their development.
Like the environment wasn't supportive?
Right. Or overbearing managerial structures that just didn't allow space for individual phronesis to operate. Also, feelings of inadequacy when facing those tough dilemmas, and significantly, a sense that the profession just wasn't being valued properly by the public or by employers.
That feeling of not being valued must be really corrosive.
It definitely is. And one crucial correlation the research found was that those professionals who self-ascribed a combination of both moral virtues, like fairness or compassion, and intellectual virtues, like judgment or perspective.
The ones linked to phronesis.
Exactly. Those individuals had the strongest sense of professional purpose, which really highlights the value of phronesis because it integrates both moral and intellectual aspects for a truly flourishing professional ethic.
Okay, so the evidence suggests phronesis is vital, it's linked to purpose, but it's often squeezed out by training and bureaucracy. If it is so vital, how do we actually cultivate it? You said Aristotle was a bit quiet on the practical how-to.
He was somewhat reticent on the nuts and bolts, yes. But building on his work and the research, we can see some approaches. A good starting point for phronesis-guided ethics education is focusing on that constitutive function we talked about.
The ability to see the ethical issues.
Right, developing that ability to identify ethical dimensions in dilemmas. This involves what you might call virtue literacy, learning to spot virtues, name them, and apply them thoughtfully to real-world experience.
So teaching people the language and concepts of virtue ethics and how to see them in action.
Exactly. But it's also critical to remember that much of professional ethics is caught, not just taught.
Meaning the environment matters hugely.
Immensely. It's absorbed through the work environment, the organizational culture, a non-virtue-friendly ethos, one steeped in rigid rules and regulations, can actually hinder the development of phronesis, even if you're teaching it explicitly. So a supportive workplace culture is absolutely essential.
That makes sense. You can't foster judgment if the system punishes it. What else?
Role model education is also key, learning from others who demonstrate practical wisdom. But the research suggests the best role models are attainable and relatable.
Not distant heroes.
Probably not, no. More like university mentors or perhaps experienced frenetic colleagues you actually work with, people you can observe and interact with, rather than, say, holding up King Solomon as an uncritical hero. I mean, he was wise in some ways, but maybe not across the board in every aspect of his life. Relatability seems key.
So focus on seeing, understanding virtue language, fostering a supportive culture, and learning from relatable role models. We've seen some attempts. You mentioned an intervention for police science students discussing realistic dilemmas.
Yes, focusing on relevant, realistic, and relatable scenarios seems promising.
But this raises a deeper question for me. What are the biggest hurdles? If we try to implement this, especially in teacher training, or frankly any profession, what are the major obstacles we're likely to face?
Oh, there are significant problems, real challenges. For one, professions like teaching are often called burdened professions.
Burdened? How so?
Because practitioners constantly encounter these psychologically charged, often life-changing situations involving others, students, parents, colleagues. And it's almost impossible to fully explain or prepare someone for the intensity of those moments beforehand. Plus, we simply don't know what kinds of novel ethical dilemmas teachers will face in 20 or 30 years.
You can't train for the unknown, essentially.
Not entirely, no. Furthermore, many dilemmas are deeply embodied. They involve physical and emotional reactions, stress, fear, empathy, anger that you can't truly know in your skin until you're actually in the situation.
Like trying to explain a complex emotion to someone who's never felt it.
Exactly. Imagine trying to intellectually explain, say, sexual jealousy to a young child. It doesn't compute without the lived experience. So the zone of proximal development, Vygotsky's idea of what a learner can do with guidance. For phronesis, it's often limited to intellectual exercises and training.
Which isn't enough for these embodied situations.
It risks what's been called developmental naivety, where someone might overestimate their practical wisdom because they've only dealt with it intellectually, a bit like the Dunning-Kruger effect where incompetence masks itself. Or it could even lead to a kind of paternalism if trainers try to over-intellectualize experiences that really need to be lived and felt to be truly understood.
Wow, those are deep challenges, the embodied nature of ethics.
They really are.
Mhm.
And finally, there's a huge institutional problem. We touched on this. Top-down control, bureaucratic cultures in schools or other organizations can seriously limit the actual scope teachers have for phonetic decision-making.
Even if they're trained for it, the system might prevent them from using it.
Precisely. As the author of one of the pieces we looked at pointedly asks, if schools are not organized in such a way that teachers' autonomy and critical decision-making is valued, why should we foreground this in teacher training?
That's a powerful point. It suggests that fostering phronesis isn't just about training individuals. It requires a much deeper look at the whole system.
A reevaluation of the overall aims of education, or the profession, and the role we truly want professionals like teachers to play.
Sure.
We want compliance officers or autonomous, wise practitioners.
Right. Okay. So phronesis helps us navigate these complex, often embodied, unpredictable situations. And you mentioned Aristotle has another key tool in his ethical framework, the golden mean. Many people have heard the term, but what exactly is it and how does it connect directly to practical wisdom?
Yes, the golden mean, or mesodes in Greek, it's a core concept. It essentially refers to the desirable middle point between two extremes, one of excess and one of deficiency.
Like courage being between recklessness and cowardice.
That's a classic example, yes. But it's crucial to understand it's not an exact mathematical average. It's not about finding the dead center. It's about finding the point that is just right for the specific circumstances you're in.
Oh, just right. So it's contextual.
Highly contextual. Aristotle says it's relative to us. Now, that doesn't mean purely subjective, like whatever feels right to me. It means what's appropriate for us as human beings, given the specifics of this particular situation, the people involved, the stakes, the timing, everything. It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all rule.
So the virtuous person isn't someone who is average, but someone who consistently finds the right response.
Exactly. The virtuous person is someone disposed to aim at and achieve what is amazing the just right in both their feelings and their actions. Aristotle elaborates this beautifully. It involves responding at the right time, about the right things, toward the right people, for the right end, and in the right way.
That's a lot of rights to get right.
It is. And that's precisely where phronesis comes in. Practical wisdom is the intellectual virtue that enables you to perceive all those factors and determine what the just right response actually is in that complex moment. The mean guides the target. Phronesis helps you aim and hit it.
Okay, so phronesis helps you find the mean. It's not about finding a bland middle ground for your overall character state, but about figuring out the just right way to act and feel moment by moment. How can you, our listener, practically apply this idea? How can you start trying to hit the mean more often in your own life?
Well, Aristotle, thankfully, does offer some practical guidance. He knew this wasn't easy. First, he suggests if you know you tend to err consistently in one direction, maybe you're naturally timid, or perhaps quick to anger, you should consciously drag yourself away in the opposite direction.
Like overcorrecting.
A bit, yes. He uses the analogy of carpenters straightening warped timber. They have to bend it significantly past the straight point to get it to settle correctly. So if you know your bias, lean against it.
Okay, that's practical. What else?
Second, when you're genuinely in doubt about which extreme is worse, aim for the less bad one. His example often relates to things like generosity. It's generally better to err on the side of being overly generous than being extremely stingy or mean. Choose the lesser vice, essentially.
Okay, aim away from the worst extreme when unsure. Good tip.
Third, and this is tough but vital, be ruthlessly honest with yourself about your personal vulnerabilities and pleasures that might cloud your judgment. We all have weaknesses or things we're drawn to that might pull us off the mean. Acknowledging them is the first step to counteracting them.
Know thyself, basically. The hard part.
Absolutely. And finally, Aristotle advises not to be too hard on yourself. Hitting the mean consistently is difficult. Mistakes are inevitable, and they are actually powerful learning opportunities for developing phronesis. The important thing is to keep reflecting, keep learning, and keep trying.
Don't let imperfection paralyze you. Keep striving. That sounds like wise advice in itself.
It really is.
So we've taken a really deep dive today into Aristotle's phronesis and the related idea of the golden mean. We've uncovered what feels like a radical, virtue-based approach to professional ethics, one that moves beyond just rules and compliance.
It's really about cultivating that inner compass, that capacity for excellent ethical decision-making. And the research suggests it's desperately needed in professions today, maybe especially in teaching.
And it's become clear, hasn't it, that cultivating phronesis isn't just about what's taught in a training course.
Not at all. It's deeply intertwined with the culture of the workplace, the opportunities for autonomous decision-making, and even the broader societal value we place on professional autonomy and critical judgment. The environment has to support it.
Yeah. So if we accept this idea that teachers, maybe like many professionals, have this kind of Janus-faced ethical mission, one face looking inward, developing their own moral character, and the other looking outward, helping their students develop theirs, then a renewed focus on phronesis could be truly transformative, couldn't it?
Potentially, yes. It shifts the focus from merely transmitting knowledge or skills to actively shaping character, both the teachers and the students.
So let's leave our listeners with this provocative thought. If we were to successfully cultivate phronesis in our teachers, really empower them to be these ethical stewards guiding students through increasingly complex times, how might that shift impact not just student character, but maybe our broader societal expectations for what it means to be a professional in any field? And how we train all professionals for a future filled with ethical quandaries we can't even predict yet?
That's a fascinating question. It could imply a fundamental shift in how we view expertise, responsibility, and the very purpose of professional life. A lot to think about.
Definitely something to mull over. Thanks for unpacking all of that today.
My pleasure. It's a crucial topic.